both sides of this issue will be amenable to that, because I think all citizens of this city feel that it is time to return these council chambers into a place of business, to move forward, and to allow you, the city council, to conduct business without all the pressures of continued recall speeches for and against at this podium. Also, before I begin, on a personal note, there are several people who do blog at the Modesto Bee and Turlock Journal. I don't know who any of those people are, for or against, and as a friend of many people in the city on both sides of this issue, I'm asking people for and against the recall to refrain from inflammatory comments, attacks on city employees who are not public officials and should not face public scrutiny and harassment and belittling and abuse. Some of the comments made against city employees by pro-recall people are quite frankly unacceptable. If you are passionate about the recall, for or against, I encourage any citizen to join a campaign for or against this recall and do it in a civilized manner, taking your argument to the people of the city and letting the people decide. The current status quo is unacceptable and undesirable for a community which is known for its hospitality and close ties. Much has come to light over the apparent breakdown of leadership, responsibility, and accountability in the government and the running of this city. But for a moment, let us put down our defensive postures and look at this situation with clarity and reason. There can be no doubt that former city officials, elected or otherwise, have acted in a manner unbecoming of their position or the great responsibilities they have been entrusted with. Accusations, finger-pointing, investigations, counter-investigations, and who said what has left the citizens of Hughson divided, displeased, and rightfully upset. 2 weeks ago, we heard the testimony of several city employees who decried their work environment and the treatment they allegedly received at the hands of city administrators. It is our sincere hope that these allegations are not true, and should they be proven true, we will stand with the victims shoulder to shoulder and demand the ousting of those responsible. What remains unclear to the people of Hughson is whether or not these employees are currently being mistreated, and whether or not those responsible for the alleged mistreatment currently remain in power. We encourage these employees who spoke up to take whatever action they feel necessary to protect themselves against further misconduct. No one should be subject to a hostile work environment. Instead of embracing the will of the people, some on this council have decided to reject it. Mr. Manley, Mr. Crowder, your comments suggesting that the responsibility of funding the election should fall on those who signed the recall petition only further shows the belittlement of your constituents. Mr. Manley, Mr. Crowder, the course of action you have suggested in the media and in these council chambers holds no legal or democratic precedent. The fact is, a sufficient number of registered Hughson voters have petitioned for recall, and this council should respect both the law and the will of the people by funding the election without further delay. Mr. Manley, Mr. Crowder, Mr. Humphreys, you and your supporters would have us believe that your actions were justifiable because of the alleged misconduct taking place in City Hall. The Citizens for Better City Government absolutely and fundamentally reject that claim. Let us review how a representative democracy works, especially here in Hughson's government. It is the city manager who is responsible for managing the City Hall. It is the City Council who is responsible for managing the city manager, and it is the people who are responsible for managing the City Council. The attempt to tie any situation that may or may not be enveloping City Hall with the recall process is unfounded and not justified. Even if the allegations of misconduct are true, they do not justify conspiracy, the slander of citizens, or violations of the law. It comes down to one very simple fact. You do not get to break the law to prove someone else broke the law. You violated the voters' trust with your own words via audio tape irresponsible emails, and irreprehensible conduct. You are not facing recall because you tried to help anyone. You are facing recall because this council has failed to take responsibility for its own actions and has lost the confidence of its people. The situation and chaos that Hughson is experiencing is not the fault of the Citizens for Better City Government, or any other Hughson citizen for that matter. It is the fault of the city's administration and the city's government. Gentlemen, all of you that sit up here are Hughson's leaders, and you alone failed to manage this crisis. Only 3 members of this council have been caught with indisputable evidence of misconduct. We have all heard the audio tape, we have all read the email, and we've all read the grand jury report. Well, quite frankly, whether the evidence is admissible in a court of law is inconsequential, because the emails, audio tape, civil grand jury report, and your personal actions are absolutely admissible in the court of public opinion. The citizens of Hughson deserve to draw their own conclusions over this evidence, and it is your legal obligation to provide for their right to do so. This recall is not only a referendum on your regrettable conduct, but it is also a vote of no confidence in your governance of this city. The corruption and division brought on by this government, whether in the city administration's level or here at the council at your level, is too great a cost to allow the status quo to continue. You know, all too often the accomplice to the crime of corruption is the indifference of the people. But the people are indifferent to the corruption of this city no longer. No more will this council or this city's administration be allowed to go unchecked by the people. Indeed, on August 24th, out of all the chaos, division, and pain, our faith in democracy will be fulfilled. Gentlemen, there would be no recall process if it wasn't for your own regrettable actions. Any cost of a recall is squarely on your shoulders and absolutely your responsibility. It is the citizens' democratic and legal right to bring you to an early ballot, and it is your democratic duty to provide for it. You, the City Council, especially those of you under the question of recall, have no jurisdiction over the legitimacy of this recall election. That decision rested with the voters, and more than the required amount, indeed 1/3 of the voting population determined that a recall election was legitimate. You do not have the right, nor should you have the audacity to stall, hamper, or deny the voice of 1,000 of Hughson citizens. Let this election come. Gentlemen, fund this election and hand it off to the county who is most experienced to run it. We are not afraid of the outcome of this election. Should you defeat the recall effort against you, we will accept the will of our fellow citizens and stand with them in helping rebuild and healing this community. However, there are no other options left but to allow the voters to bring closure to this crisis. Gentlemen, if you truly believe you have the majority of Hughson voters behind you, or if you absolutely disagree with the evidence that the civil grand jury and or the Citizens for Better City Government have presented against you, then by all means, meet us out on the campaign trail and state your case as we state ours. Let the people of Hughson decide the validity of our arguments at the ballot box. Any vote not to properly fund this election tonight can only be explained by your fear of the election itself. As this process moves forward, we the people will be watching. We expect you, the council, to provide for a fair, open, and honest elections process. We expect you, the council, to heed the words of we the people, and we expect you to end your pursuit of political favors to your friends and to yourselves. We expect you to act in a civilized manner and treat your constituents with respect. We expect you to act with integrity and adhere to the laws of our land. Failure to do so, and you will only further increase a legacy of division and mistrust. Gentlemen,